Hi, welcome to another Onwards and Upwards education video. This one is Year 8 Algebra 1.4 and it's all about multiplying terms. So one of the major differences between adding or subtracting algebraic terms and multiplying them is that while sometimes terms can't be added or subtracted, any term can be multiplied. So the skill here is not so much recognizing when or when not to multiply, it's more a matter of knowing which way to do it. Some of the techniques we'll cover here include multiplying like terms, multiplying unlike terms, multiplying fractions, and also multiplying decimals. Let's begin with simply multiplying pronumerals and numbers. When multiplying a single pronumeral and a number, you're taking two terms and simplifying them into one term. For example, if you've got f times 6, that becomes 6f. Or 14 times m becomes 14m. Multiplying a single pronumeral and two numbers, you're taking three terms and simplifying them into one. For example, f times 6 times 4, you've essentially got two like terms there, which are both the numbers. Alright, and we know straight away that we can simplify those. So we have f times 24, and then the final step is multiplying those two together, so you end up with 24f. Now let's try multiplying with two pronumerals. When you multiply two pronumerals, you also take two terms and simplify them into one. For example, f times h becomes fh, and m times n becomes mn. When multiplying a term that already involves a number and a pronumeral with another pronumeral, again, you're taking two terms and simplifying them into one. For example, 4f times h simply becomes 4fh, and 6m times n becomes 6mn. When you add more numbers and pronumerals, it gets a little trickier, but the same rules apply. So if you have more than one term with a pronumeral and a number, you can still simplify them down into one term. For example, if you've got 4f times 6h, you can think of that as basically needing to multiply the 4 and the 6 with one another, and then also the f and the h with one another. So you end up with 4 times 6, which is 24, and f times h, which is fh. So your answer is going to be 24fh. If you've got 5m times 3n, then again, you multiply the 5 and the 3, and then multiply the m and the n. And so here, your answer ends up being 15mn. So when you have more than one of the same pronumeral, the process of multiplying is distinctly different to adding. If you have more than one term with the same pronumeral, you have to multiply the pronumerals as well as the numbers. For example, 4h times 6h, alright, you've got the 4 times the 6, and then you've also got the h times the h. Alright, don't be tricked into just thinking it's two lots of h, alright, it's definitely h times h. So in the end here, we've got 4 times 6 gives us 24, and h times h gives us h squared. In the second example, 5m times 3m, well, you've got your 5 times 3, which gives you 15, and then m times m, which makes m squared. Alright, so let's have a look at when you get into multiplying with negative numbers. When there are negatives involved, you need to follow the rules about whether the results ought to be positive or negative. And I've just popped them down in the corner here. So if you're multiplying a positive number by a positive number, your answer is going to be positive. If you're multiplying a negative number by another negative number, your answer in that case is also going to be positive. If you're multiplying a negative number by a positive number, in any order, your answer is going to be negative. Also, you might notice that a negative that's not at the front of the expression will often be written in brackets to remind you that the sign stays with the term. For example, in this first example, you've got negative 4 times 6h. So you think about your negative 4 times 6, which gives you negative 24, and you've got your h in there as well. In the second example, 5 times negative 3n. Right, you've got your 5 times negative 3, which is negative 15, and then your n there as well. And finally, negative 11d times 7d. Alright, we've got negative 11 times 7, and then we've also got d times d. So we end up with negative 77d squared. So sometimes you might be asked to multiply with decimal numbers. If you are multiplying decimal numbers, there are a few things to keep in mind. Firstly, decimal numbers multiply just like whole numbers. The trick is putting the decimal place in the correct spot in your answer. Secondly, try to remember that a number that's smaller than 1 is always going to make for a smaller answer, not a bigger one, like in the case of multiplying whole numbers. For example, if you multiply 5 by 0.6k, then your answer ends up being 3k. Now if you'd multiplied the 5 by 6, you'd end up with 30k, but because you're multiplying it by a number that's smaller than 1, your answer is going to be smaller than what you started with. In the second example, 0.4b times 0.3, right, the answer here is 0.12b. Alright, now if you looked at it and you multiplied, say, 4 by 3, you'd end up with 12. But because both 0.4 and 0.3 are numbers that are smaller than 1, alright, your answer, when you multiply them, is actually going to get smaller, not bigger. So in this case, it ends up being 0.12b. You're going to need to know how to multiply with fractions too. If you are multiplying fractions, always remember that both terms will have a numerator and a denominator, and that's a number on top and on the bottom of the fraction. If there isn't a denominator written there, then assume it's 1. For example, just here we've got 4 on 5 multiplied by 10d. Alright, so 4 over 5 times 10d is actually the same as saying 4 on 5 multiplied by 10d on 1. Alright, and then we can have a look at it. Okay, so we'll multiply the top numbers by each other. So we've got 4 times 10d, and then we can multiply the bottom ones by each other too, and 5 times 1. So if we simplify the top and the bottom, then we've got 40d divided by 5. And suddenly you can then say, okay, well, what's 40 divided by 5? Oh, that's 8. And then we keep our pronumeral there. So our answer is 8d. In this second example, alright, if you've got 3/4 and you're multiplying it by 12f, alright, we can rewrite that as 3/4 multiplied by 12f over 1. So again, we're going to multiply the two numerators, which are the numbers on the top, and we get 3 times 12f, and then we can multiply the denominators, which are the numbers on the bottom as well, so 4 times 1. So if we simplify that, we've got 36f over 4, and then you can divide your 36 by 4, and you end up with 9, and we keep our pronumeral there. So our answer is 9f. Now how about some written problems to solve? Because we all know that those happen in our textbooks and our exams as well. So Wendy is buying a flat pack furniture for her new apartment. She's purchased quite a lot of stuff, but she only has a small car. Wendy makes 4 trips altogether, and each time she fits B number of boxes in the car. Each box contains P number of pieces. So, let's write an equation for the total number of pieces of furniture that Wendy is going to have to assemble. Alright, so the easiest way to attack these kinds of problems is to write down what you know. And we know that in each trip, the number of pieces of furniture that she carries is equal to B times P, because she's got B number of boxes in the car, and each one of those boxes has P number of pieces. We also know that she makes 4 trips back and forth from the store. So that means that we've got 4 times b times p. And then we can simplify that down to 4bp. Nice work. Now you've tried multiplying like terms, multiplying unlike terms, multiplying decimals, and multiplying fractions. In the next video, Algebra 1.5, we cover dividing terms in all the same situations that we've looked at here.